Welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services informational video, American Latino Museum Internship and Fellowship Initiative Applicant Information Session. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of our American Latino Internship and Fellowship Initiative program, which we call ALMIFI for short, and the process of preparing an application for funding. This video is organized into 6 chapters. What is the American Latino Museum Internship and Fellowship Initiative? This section explains the purpose and design of the ALMIFI grant program. What can ALMIFI grants fund? This section explains the types of projects that can be funded in ALMIFI and the amount of funds that can be requested. Application components, introduction. This section describes the types of documents that are needed to create an ALMIFI grant application. Application components budget. This section provides details on the information to include in your project budget, application tips, and next steps. The concluding section provides a few tips and next steps. The complete set of instructions for how to prepare and submit an ALMIFI grant application are found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, otherwise known as the NOFO, published on grants.gov and also available on the IMLS website. Please refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the most detailed information to prepare your application. To get the most out of this video, we recommend that you watch all of it in its entirety. This will give you an understanding of the ALMIFI grant program, the types of projects that can be funded, and the necessary application components. You may also want to review the ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity before, during, and after you watch the video. Notices of Funding Opportunities, also known as NOFOs, are documents that detail the requirements of each of our grant programs for fiscal year 2024. All of our NOFOs can be found on imls.gov/grants. As you navigate the application process, you can use this video as a reference tool. If you'd like to skip to a specific section, please use the time bar below or the links in the description box to navigate the chapters. So what is ALHC or ALMIFI? In this section, we will answer the questions: what is ALMIFI, providing information on the purpose and intent of this grant program and who it is designed to serve. The American Latino History and Culture, otherwise known as ALCH, program was created by an act of Congress in 2020, which authorized the Smithsonian to create the National Museum of the American Latino, and it also authorized the IMLS to create a grant program to improve operations, care of collections, and development of professional management at American Latino museums. This is referred to as the ALMIFI Initiative. You can be one of the following types of organizations to be eligible to apply to ALMIFI. If you are applying as a museum, you will need to certify that you use a professional staff, are organized on a permanent basis for essentially educational or aesthetic purposes, own or use tangible objects, either animate or inanimate, care for these objects, exhibit these objects to the general public on a regular basis, at least 120 days a year, and conduct these activities in facilities that you own or operate. As a museum, you should keep in mind that all applicants must meet certain requirements to be eligible for federal funding. Your organization must be located in one of the United States, 50 states, its territories, or the District of Columbia. Also, your organization must be a unit of a state, local, or tribal government, or a private nonprofit organization with tax-exempt status. Institutions of higher education are also eligible to apply. For this, you must also be in partnership with an institution of higher education, which includes Hispanic serving institutions. The lead applicant can be the university or college in partnership with a museum. Either is correct as long as there is a partnership in place. Your museum may be a standalone organization, or they may be part of a larger institution, such as a college, university, tribe, or state or local government. You could also qualify as a not-for-profit museum, service organization, or association whose primary purpose, as reflected in its mission, is to support museums identified above. In this section, we will answer the question, what can ALMIFI fund? Providing details on the types of projects and associated goals within the ALMIFI grant program, as well as offer some summary data on the number of ALMIFI projects that were funded last year. ALMIFI grants are designed to support project-based activities, so let's take time to consider just exactly what that means. The Project Management Institute defines a project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. They go on further to explain that a project is temporary because it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore defined scope and resources. And a project is unique in that it is not a routine operation, but rather a specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. We recommend that you keep this definition in mind as you conceptualize your IMLS project. Think of it as a temporary, non-routine set of activities which collectively have a beginning and an end in time, a defined scope requiring specific resources, and which are designed to accomplish a specific singular goal. Now, I want to talk about the two program goals for ALMIFI. Your project must align with one of the two program goals and a set of corresponding objectives. Goal and objective choices should be identified clearly in the narrative. See section D2C. Goal 1 is to support of museum-based undergraduate internships. Its objectives correspond to the types of project ALMIFI supports. An example of this would be developing a new curriculum for museum studies programs with a lens on American Latino life for use by museums across the country. This would correspond to objective 1.1. If there's already an existing internship program that is being expanded in relation to American Latino culture, this could correspond to objective 1.2. Goal 2 is about museum-based fellowships to increase museum career opportunities for individuals focused on American Latino culture. The two objectives are parallel to those that we saw in Goal 1. They support the development or scaling up fellowship models for museum professionals on topics that increase their ability to work within museums centering American Latino culture. Projects in Goal 2 would establish or expand advanced professional studies, mentorship, and practical research. All requests must be between $100,000 and $750,000, with including both direct and indirect costs. If you ask for less than $100,000 or more than $750,000, your application will be rejected and not reviewed. There is no cost share requirement for ALMIFI, though you may include one if your organization will contribute funds toward this particular project. It is important to note that if you decide to include cost share in your application, it must be met by the end of the award. We will hold you to that figure, so keep that in mind when applying. Cost share may be in the form of cash, staff, or volunteer time, or third-party contributions. It may not be funds from another federal source. In terms of how many applications you may submit, there is no limit to the number of applications you can file in response to the FY24 funding announcement for ALMIFI. As you consider the option to submit more than one application, we urge you to think about the capacity of your organization to manage multiple federal awards at once. The amount of applications received and the amount of awards made can vary from year to year. Here's a snapshot of our most recent applications and awards cycle. In FY23, IMLS made 8 ALMIFI awards with a total of $4.1 million in federal funds. We received 22 ALMIFI applications, resulting in 36% of those applications being funded. The average amount of federal funds for each project was $521,765. In this section, we will introduce the components of an ALMIFI grant application and provide an overview about the required, conditionally required, and supporting documents. The ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity includes a complete list of all the application components. Most of these components are created by applicants and saved as a PDF for uploading as part of your application package in grants.gov. The Table of Application Components, section D2A of the NOFO, lists which application components are required, as well as those that are conditionally required. For example, some components are included in the application depending on the type of applicant or the type of project. Aside from the SF424S and the IMLS Museum Program Information Form, which are completed in the grants.gov workspace, all application components must be submitted as PDF documents. These are the required documents. All applications must include the documents listed here. Omission of even just one of these documents might result in your application's rejection. Also important to note, there is a 10-page limit for the narrative. If you exceed the page limit specified in the NOFO, we must remove the extras before your application goes out for review. That means your reviewer may see a paragraph or sentence end in mid-air and will wonder about your organizational skills and your attentiveness to detail. So make sure your content fits into the page limits specified and make sure the number of pages holds when you convert your document to a PDF. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applications must include 1, 2, or even all 3 of these, and it's your job to figure out which are required for yours. If you're applying as a nonprofit, then you must include your proof of nonprofit status issued by the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. We will not accept a letter of state sales tax exemption as proof of nonprofit status. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, then you must include a copy of your final rate agreement. If you will create digital products during the course of your project, then you must complete and submit a digital products plan. Just like the required documents, omission of even one might result in your application's rejection. Please note that the term digital product includes 1, digitized and born digital content, resources or assets, and 2, software. If you are creating any of these types of materials, you must include the form with your application. The third group of application components is supporting documents, and there is a partial list of examples. Supporting documents are optional. You may submit some or none. Include only those items that will supplement your proposal. This is not the place to introduce brand new information, but rather, as the name suggests, they should lend support to your project justification, work plan, and intended results that you've already spelled out in your application narrative. For example, have you identified a partner whose involvement is key to the project's success? If so, a letter of support or commitment would go a long way to reassuring reviewers that they are on board and the project will succeed. Pictures can help give reviewers who may not be familiar with your institution, programs, collections, or community, and get a better idea of what you're describing within your narrative. Vendor quotes or equipment specifications show that you've done some of the legwork in getting appropriate estimates for project costs. We recommend that you be respectful of your reviewers' time and avoid any temptation to include hundreds of pages of extraneous material. Being judicious really does work to your benefit, as supporting documents can make or break an application. Include what's important, helpful, and directly relevant to your project, and stop there. In the following sections of this presentation, we will focus on these application components: narrative and budget. Go to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for complete instructions on how to prepare and complete all of the application components. In this section, we will go over the questions you will need to answer in your project narrative and offer details on the review criteria associated with each of the three sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results. So let's talk about the narrative of your proposal. You have 10 pages to cover three very important issues, and the Notice of Funding Opportunity provides lengthy guidance on what the narrative should cover. First is the project justification. What need, problem, or challenge will your project address, and how was it identified? Describe how you have used demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, or any other relevant data from reliable sources to define the need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. Who is the target group for your project, and how have they been involved in the planning? Target group refers to those who will be most immediately and positively affected by your project. Identify the number of individuals in the target group or in each target group, if you identify more than one. Who are the ultimate beneficiaries for this project? Beneficiaries refers to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same as your target group. Identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term, if reliable and defensible counts are possible. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. In Section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, under Review Criteria, you will find a list of questions that reviewers are asked to consider when they review your proposal. It is a good idea to refer to these as you craft your narrative to be certain you are providing reviewers clear, solid information. You will see that they correspond fairly directly with the prompts you are given to write your narrative. One of the prompts in the project justification section of the narrative is the identification of the need, problem, or challenge your project addresses. It is foundational in your application, so keep those points in mind. The federal government wants its investment to result in something getting better. As you define your need, problem, or challenge, articulate what will get better as the result of your project as precisely as possible. Will your museum be able to expand their services as a result of additional staff? Will new graduates be better prepared for the museum field with the requisite experience? Will collections be better cared for? Will their lifespan be extended? Will access to your collections and the information surrounding them be expanded? Identify why it is important that this particular change happens. Hone your problem definition carefully in clear, succinct terms. And lastly, gather and present data that support your problem definition. For your project work plan, if the project justification section was the why, the project work plan section is where you identify the who, what, when, and how. Who will do what activities, when, and using what resources. You should explain how you will track your progress toward achieving your intended results and what you'll do if you need to correct course. We also ask you to think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and to tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. I'll say more about this in just a few minutes. Again, this is the list of questions in section E of the NOFO that reviewers are asked to consider when they review your proposal. So make sure your narrative is answering these effectively. This list ranges from proposed activities, key identified staff, and measurable information. Your work plan will be built on activities, so it's important to be clear about just what an activity is. An activity is something that someone does. It has a beginning and an end, just like projects, and you know when you finished it because it doesn't need to be done anymore. An activity is not a goal, a result, or an outcome. Rather, it is something you do as part of striving to achieve those. Aim for a reasonable level of detail in identifying your activities. We also ask you to think about the risks that are inherent in your particular project and to tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. Think of it as answering the question, what if? There is no checklist of risks, but every project has them. The best proposals will show you that you are aware of them and have thought through a plan for dealing with them. Look at your activities and think about what could go wrong. Focus on the ones where your experience, your own or that of your group, tells you, yes, that could happen, and identify steps that you would take in response. IMLS knows that things go differently than expected. We just want you to prepare by identifying implementable options. Here are some examples of risk that might be part of your project for which you might seek ALMIFI funding. A project may be dependent upon fundraising to generate the cost share, but it is not complete by the time the application is submitted. What will the institution do if that money is not available by the time the project gets underway? A project may be structured around university interns who will be selected and trained according to well thought out processes. So what will happen if one or more interns drops out? What's the plan for replacing them mid-project? Or maybe a project depends on your community partners to achieve success, but one partner drops out mid-project. What do you do now? Project results. The third section of your narrative should be devoted to articulating your project's intended results. This section is your chance to convince the reviewers that your project will result in something getting better. The need or problem you defined in your project justification will be addressed directly, and it will be diminished or eliminated altogether. We ask you to tell us what data you will collect and report in order to measure your project's success. If your project will generate tangible products, and most do, here's the opportunity to describe them and make the case that they will be useful. And last but not least, we ask that you tell us how you will sustain the benefits of the project. How will this improvement that you propose to make continue once your grant is over? Again, here is a list of review questions that reviewers were asked to consider when they read and score the project results section of your narrative. These are found in section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. All of your results should tie back to your need, problem, or challenge. You may well experience tangential benefits and or positive outcomes, but make sure that you identify them as in addition to and not instead of your original intended results. Reviewers are likely to see that as a disconnect. We often hear that defining intended results and success measures is challenging for applicants. So it's worth spending a bit of time on this here. Let's think back to the questions we referenced a couple of slides ago when we talked about defining the need, problem, or challenge that your project is addressing. If you said someone will learn something, how will you know? If your problem related to segments of your community being better able to work together, how will you know when that has been achieved? If you're digitizing to expand accessibility, how will you know when you're done with it? This focus on results and measuring success in meaningful ways is not new. There's been tremendous amount of work done on ways to measure success. For you as an applicant, though, we encourage you to consider using a logic model or an outcomes-based model evaluation tool to explain your intended results and your plan for achieving your goals. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results, and you have 10 pages for it. The sections are all equally important. Write clearly, address what we ask you to address, and keep an eye on those review criteria. We're telling you here exactly what the reviewers will look for, so make it easy for them to find it and understand it. In this section, we will provide information on what to include in your project budget and budget justification, and provide some examples of allowable and unallowable costs. An important component of your application is the budget. This is the part of the application where you specify all the costs associated with your proposed project. The budget consists of 2 required components: the IMLS budget form and the budget justification. The IMLS budget form is a fillable PDF that accommodates up to 3 years of project activities and expenses. The budget should include the project costs that will be charged to grant funds, as well as those that will be supported by cost share. In-kind contributions to cost share may include the value of services, for example, donated volunteers or consultant time, or equipment donated to the project between the authorized start and end dates of your project. All the items listed, whether supported by grant funds or cost share, must be necessary to accomplish project activities, allowable according to the applicable federal cost principles, auditable, and incurred during the award period of performance. The IMLS budget form can be downloaded directly from the IMLS website. As you develop your budget, keep in mind that there are certain costs that are either allowable or unallowable according to federal regulations. The allowability of a cost item for all federal grants are specified in the Code of Federal Regulation, CFR, sometimes referred to as 2 CFR 200 for short, but the full title is Title 2, Subtitle A, Chapter 2, Part 200, Uniform Administrative Requirements, Cost Principles, and Audit Requirements for Federal Awards. Using the 2 CFR 200 as a basis, we've developed a short list of allowable costs that are most common to projects. See Section D6 of the ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity, which includes a partial list of the most common examples of allowable costs. This short list of allowable costs are also shown on this slide. These costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, or what you will pay for as part of your cost share. The rules and allowability apply equally to grant funds as well as cost share. When completing your project budget, be sure to check that all the costs you include, whether grant funds or cost share, are allowable. There are also some costs which are unallowable according to the federal regulations in 2 CFR 200. In Section D6 of the ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity, we also provide an abbreviated list of unallowable costs. These are also listed on this slide. Unallowable costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for, nor can they be part of what you will pay as part of your cost share. In fact, unallowable expenses can't show up anywhere in your proposal. As you prepare your application, it's a good idea to compare your list of proposed expenses against these lists of allowable and unallowable costs and against the appropriate set of cost principles. If after that you have specific questions, please contact us and we'd be more than happy to help. In addition to the IMLS budget form, you will also prepare a budget justification. This is an opportunity to provide in a more detailed narrative format an explanation or justification for the project costs. The budget justification should be written to follow the cost categories in the IMLS budget form. In the justification, you will identify each expense and show the method of cost computation used to determine each dollar amount, including any that you may have consolidated and summarized on the IMLS budget form. In other words, please show your math. For example, in the section Salaries and Wages, you should identify each person whose salary or wages will be paid with IMLS funds or by cost share. Provide their names and describe their role in the project. Document the method of cost for computation by including the base salary of wages for each person and the percentage of time each person is allocated to the project activities, which may be shown as a percentage of time, number of days, or a number of hours. If cost share is being provided by unpaid volunteers, explain how you arrived at the dollar amount used to represent the value of their services. In the section for supplies, materials, and equipment, you should list each type of supply, material, and equipment you propose to purchase or provide as cost share for the project. Detail the number and unit cost for each item and explain how you arrived at the dollar amounts. You may also provide vendor quotes or price lists as supporting documents with your application. In summary, considering all the components of your application, there are 4 general characteristics of successful ALMIFI applications that reviewers will look for. As you prepare your application, keep these characteristics in mind. First, institutional impact. Your project should provide opportunities for internships and fellowships at American Latino museums for students enrolled in institutions of higher education, which could include Hispanic serving institutions. Second, in-depth knowledge. Your proposal should reflect a thorough understanding of current practice and knowledge about the subject matter. Third, project-based design. Your work plan should consist of a set of logical, interrelated activities tied directly to addressing the key need or challenge. And fourth, demonstrable results. Your project should generate measurable results that tie directly to the need or challenge it was designed to address. An application that has all of these 4 characteristics will stand out in the review process and will have the best chance of success for funding. In this final section of our presentation, we offer some application tips and next steps. We want to share with you the places to look for more information, such as the IMLS website, where you can find the awarded grants search to learn more about the projects we have funded in the past. The awarded grants search gives you an opportunity to explore our archive of grants that we have awarded in past years using a variety of criteria, such as institution name, location, and keywords. Your search will basic information about the award and a brief description of the project. This can be extremely helpful as you put ideas together for your own project. We have also posted the narrative and schedule of completion for a cross-section of successful applications from 2023. To find these examples, go to the sample applications section on the IMLS website. Looking at these proposals might help clarify your thinking about your own project. Each PDF contains a copy of the 10-page narrative and also the schedule of completion. We can only make grants to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including attachments on or before the deadline. So here are some tips to help you do just that. First, start early. You've already done that by participating in this webinar. Become familiar with grants.gov's workspace. It has many good features, including upfront validation, which allows you to correct errors prior to submission, and the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application. Consider starting with the workspace overview and check out the tutorials. Do your background research. Make it easy for the reviewers to see that you are up to date and know what you're talking about. Be sure your application is complete. Check it against the table of application components in the NOFO. Make sure all application components are in the proper format and follow the correct naming conventions. And lastly, submit to grants.gov early so you can correct any errors and avoid any trauma created by technology challenges. It's important that you get your application submitted online through grants.gov before the deadline. IMLS does not accept applications by mail or email. In order to register with grants.gov, you must have an active SAM.gov registration and unique entity identified number. Make sure that your registration for both of these sites are complete, that your accounts are active, and that any necessary passwords are current. These registrations expire periodically, so do not wait until it's time to hit the submit button and check in on your accounts. You should coordinate with any other staff members, such as your authorized organization representative, who may hold the accounts or passwords that you will need to submit. Both the SAM.gov and grants.gov websites have robust help features and FAQs. If you run into technical issues with either of these sites, you should reach out to their help desk and request a tracking case or ticket number in order to document your issue and attempts at resolving it. Failure to have an active SAM.gov or grants.gov registration by the application deadline is not an excuse for submitting a late application. So again, start early. There are many components to the application and the narrative, and it is essential and critical part of the package. Peer reviewers, museum professionals from all types of museums will be selected by IMLS to read each application and provide constructive and critical comments on the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed projects. They also base the reviews only on the information contained in the application. So don't assume that a reviewer or IMLS will know something about your museum or your proposed project. To help make sure your narrative is as clear and complete as possible, revisit the ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity and follow the narrative outline that it provides. Be sure to consider the review criteria associated with each section of the narrative. Use headings, subheadings, or numbered sections in your narrative to make it easy for reviewers to read. Avoid generalities, acronyms, or jargon. The people who will review your application are museum professionals, but they may not be totally familiar with your particular field shorthand. So make it easy for them to understand what you mean. An advantage to starting your application early is you can ask a colleague to review everything with fresh eyes before you submit. Ask them to act like a reviewer who's seeing this for the very first time. Here are a few important dates relating to ALMIFI applications. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 1st, 2024. The date is non-negotiable. The time stamp is auto-generated by grants.gov system, and we have no ability to override it. We will say this repeatedly to start early and submit your application early. That way, if you encounter a difficulty of any kind when submitting your proposal, you'll have some time to resolve the problem and resubmit. After the application deadline, IMLS staff will review your application for completeness and eligibility, and you will hear from us via email if there are any problems. Next, we will select experienced and knowledgeable peer reviewers to read your application and provide scores and comments based on the criteria outlined in the ALMIFI Notice of Funding Opportunity. IMLS staff will examine your budget, your financials, and track your record with past current grants. We then prepare materials for the IMLS Deputy Director for Museums and the IMLS Director. By law, the IMLS Director is charged with the authority and responsibility to make final award decisions, and this typically happens in May. In July 2024, we will notify you by email of the award decisions and provide the scores and comments created by the reviewers. ALMIFI projects must be scheduled to start on the first day of August 2024. As you read through the NOFO and prepare your application, additional questions may arise before the application deadline. We can help you with learning more about the ALMIFI grant program or other grant programs at IMLS, address any specific concerns with the various application components, or help you understand the review process. You may contact IMLS program staff by email or phone. Contact information is listed on the grant program landing page on the IMLS website. You may also schedule a counseling call to meet directly with program staff. Use the links found on the grant program landing page to find an available time slot on your calendar. You will then receive an email with a calendar invite and Microsoft Teams meeting link. Thank you for watching this presentation. Good luck on your applications.